Ciao friends! In this video I want to show you how to use DAX Studio to compute a measure. Now, when I have DAX Studio connected to a model, I can see the measure of the model here in the metadata pane. And I can drag and drop a measure here, and I could try to execute the measure to see the result of its value. However, if you try to use run, you get an error. This is a very common question, why I cannot execute a measure in DAX Studio. The reason is DAX Studio requires you to write a query index. And a query index must start with the keyword evaluate. However, if I write evaluate followed by sales amount and I try to execute the query, I still get another error. This time the error is that the expression I wrote after evaluate is not a table expression. The requirement for evaluate is to have a table expression, a DAX expression returning a table. And a measure is a scalar expression, it's just a value, a number or a string. So in order to get a valid result, I have to put this value within a table. And the easiest way to get a table in DAX is, for example, to use the table constructor syntax, which requires a simple pair of curly braces. Whatever I put in curly braces is put into a table that in this case will have only one row and one column. If I click run, you see that now the result is a column called value. I don't have control over the name of the column, and the result of this column is the evaluation of the measure sales amount. If I want to display multiple measures, I can write other values here. So I could write, for example, the value of the margin and also the margin percentage. And if I click run, you see that I get 3 rows. Why I have 3 rows? Because the table constructor syntax has one row for each value in the list. However, you can also create a table that has multiple columns, and so you can define rows with different columns. If I click a simple parenthesis here, now I am defining a table that has one row with 3 columns, and I could add other rows to this table using comma, and I can use the same syntax. For example, I just multiply this by 2 just to see a different number. The important thing that all the rows must have the same number of columns. If I click run, the result has 2 rows and 3 columns. Now you see that I don't have a control over the column name, which is usually not a problem if we're using DAX Studio just to test the value of a measure. However, if for any reason you want to create a table controlling the column names, you have another syntax available in DAX, which is a function called row. Now, if I use row, I have to write for each column the name of the column and the expression that will be evaluated for that column in a single row. The result of row is a single row. So let's use row to display just the value of sales amount. So here I'm writing sales with the sales amount, then I can write a margin, then I can write the margin percentage, and so on. Let's just stop with the first 2. I just want to write something easy. I click run and I get as a result 2 columns with 1 row, but this time I can control the name of the columns. We have seen how to use DAX Studio to test the evaluation of a measure, of multiple measures, in a very simple query. Enjoy DAX!